Hello my fellow leaders, I'm Starboy and today we'll be looking at Transformers Power of the Prime's Deluxe Class Autobot Jazz. Jazz came out in 2017 as part of Wave 1 of the Deluxe assortment. For those of you who don't know who Jazz is, Jazz was part of the original cast of the 1984 Transformers cartoon and was sometimes Optimus Prime's second-in-command. He's a very cool, very savvy Autobot and is a huge fan of music, much as his name suggests. Power of the Prime's Jazz turns into some sort of amalgamation of a regular sports car and a racing car, which is based ever so slightly on the Porsche 962. He shares some parts with Combiner Wars drag strip, but the only parts in question in vehicle mode are the tires. I really love the shape of this vehicle mode, it's super sleek. The paintwork is also really well done, and he's even got the iconic Martini racing stripes on his hood and roof. There's some really crisp red trim along the front, and blue trim along the sides. And here we get to the fun part. You see these tampagraphs? You see this Autobot symbol? You see what's written under it? That is Autobot script for the letters M, A, G, and A, in reference to the campaign slogan of President Donald Trump, Make America Great Again. It should be noted that this was the work of a rogue artist and not the result of Hasbro intentionally putting political messages into its merchandise. A big problem I have with this vehicle mode is that half of it is clear plastic. I really hate clear plastic, and the entire front of the vehicle, discounting the side panels, are made of it. I'm really worried for the long-term survivability of this figure, but I do have to admit that the paint matching to the base white plastic was spot on. For size comparison, here's Dark of the Moon Bumblebee, Fall of Cybertron Jazz, and Combiner Wars drag strip. Jazz's transformation is very reminiscent of the Combiner Wars aerial bots, except a whole lot less graceful. The upper body extends extremely far to get out of the way of the legs, and has some pretty involved panel flippage to get his chest piece just right. Moving down to the legs, extending this is a chore. The panels you have to open inwards, meaning there's a whole lot of bumping into other parts just to extend his legs. It's not a very pleasant experience in all honesty. And here we have the robot mode. In this mode, the parts he shares with Dragstrip include the combiner port. I quite like the robot mode. The shapes and proportions really rub me the right way here. His visor is painted in a vivid sky blue, which I really love, though his face is overall very unpronounced and mushy. His hulking boots feel a step down from there, with the black paint globbed all over the place. The silver venting is done nicely, though. It's just such a shame that so much of the paint budget went into covering the clear plastic with white. He could have had so many more details in robot mode. In terms of tolerances, Jazz's lower legs feel a bit floppy handling them, but they only have a couple millimeters of wiggle room. They hold in place fairly well otherwise, and won't be a problem trying to stand him or pose him. For size comparison, here's Bumblebee, Jazz, and Dragstrip. Gone are the days of the Combiner Wars hand-foot guns and the Titans Return chair guns, and in are the days of hands. No hands that are also guns, just hands. Flipping the peg to the inside and mounting it onto Jazz's arm allows it to be like a buckler or something, which is nice. Flipping the peg to the outside allows the thumb pegs to slot into divots in Jazz's chest to form chest armor, which sticks out way too much to look any semblance of good. The clear plastic piece can be taken out of the hand and used as a makeshift handgun, which would be nice if he didn't already have a really good handgun to begin with. This thing is painted with a really shimmery silver paint, which I adore, and looks great to boot. In vehicle mode, all three pieces can store, with the hand trying its hardest to look like a booster or something. Also, if you take out the translucent gun, you can fit a Titan Master or Prime Master inside. Okay, so I'm foregoing my usual posability segment in lieu of something a bit more off the cuff, mostly because I want to talk about his strange jointing. See, Power of the Prime's Jazz is jointed a little bit differently than most Transformers usually would. Of course, he has a standard ball joint head that gets some nice range, some nice waggle room. He can look up and down, side to side and stuff. And then when you get to the shoulders, they're on a mushroom peg that goes all the way around, and that's fine, but no outward motion on this part. The outward motion is based in here. There's a pin going through this joint where it looks like this, and it looks a little awkward, but it gets the job done, I guess. He has ball-jointed elbows, which are fine. They get a good range, good bend. And then he has wrists as a separate piece connected to this mushroom peg, and in theory they should be articulated, but you can't get more than a few degrees out of them which is a bit disappointing. Maybe if they had budget for more parts, they could have had this part fold back up here to allow the wrists to rotate a little more. Down by the waist, he has a good waist swivel that's not really needed for anything except for his combined modes. He has ball-jointed hips, which get really good range. He can't go back too far because of this massive backpack that is kind of unfurling itself because I moved it earlier. But he gets a nice spread. He has a cut for a thigh swivel, and he has a good knee joint, and in theory you can use this toe joint, but I would suggest against it. Overall, he's pretty posable. You can get him into a good stance, a good fighting pose, anything you really want. That's right, this Jazz can combine. I almost forgot to write these sections. Starting in vehicle mode, let's get Jazz into his leg configuration. Yep, it's really that simple. We're gonna have to borrow Combiner War's hand-foot gun since Jazz's accessory can only form a hand, and I don't really care for it. Sure, it looks fine, but it hardly stays together well at all, and there's an unsightly gap in the front that's only partially fixed with the addition of his handgun. Sadly, this is how I prefer to display Jazz if I have him combined with anyone. For size comparison, here's Bumblebee, Jazz, and Dragstrip. Going back into vehicle mode, let's get him into arm mode. Conversion to this mode is a mix of leg mode and robot mode, and it's easy enough. What I dislike most is that the entire upper section of the vehicle mode doesn't lock in, only rests on some guiding tabs on the torso. The finished arm is just flimsy, with the pauldron feeling free to unseat itself at a moment's notice, and the legs might sometimes split apart. For size comparison, here's Bumblebee and Dragstrip. Overall, on Leader Starboy's review scale, I have to rate Power of the Prime's Autobot Jazz as overall good. The vehicle and robot modes are good and hold up pretty well. The accessories have a decent enough play pattern, though I'd rather have the Combiner War's hand-foot guns compared to this, and the transformation is passable. The limb modes are a huge detriment to this figure, which suffer from poor tolerances and not enough locking points. This has been Leader Starboy. Power of the Primes gets better from here, right? Right?